Hi, my name is Calvin Robinson from Defund the BBC. This time I'm honoured to be joined by Christian Wakeford MP. Christian, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Calvin.
Not at all. So you were elected in December last year as the Conservative Member of Parliament for Bury South. Or is it pronounced Bury South? Sorry about my mispronunciation.
It depends where you're from, but being a northerner, I would say Bury.
Okay, all right, good. I'm a Midlander myself, so I'll get there. But given the situation around COVID-19 and lockdown, you must have had, the opportunity to speak to quite a lot of your ordinary people across your constituency. Not only during the election campaign, but since then, when so many people's lives have been turned upside down. So my first question for you is, do you think that the BBC represents these constituents and your constituents? And are they making the kind of programs that your constituents want to watch and that they can identify with?
Unfortunately, I'm not speaking to as many people as I would like, with heightened restrictions and not being able to mix between households and everything. It's been a very trying few months up in Bury. However, those that I have spoken to, either in surgeries or Zoom calls, etc., I think the overall consensus, especially for most people, is that they're aghast with some of the decisions that have been made by the BBC in recent months. Whether that was the shambles of the last night of the proms, a lot of the woke agenda that's been kind of permeating not only the main news shows with the likes of Newsnight, but almost the entire BBC. But actually, just how they seem to bow down to almost every single pressure group going, whether it was the issues of the Black Lives Matter movement at the time. It's very kind of the namby-pamby approach that actually, as Northerners, as people with common sense, we've grown to almost detest. Certainly in recent years, if not going further back. So I'm glad it looks like some common sense is approaching the BBC moving forward, especially with potentially a new Director General as well.
Well, yes, we'll get to him later. But I want to address the letter that you signed. In July, you signed a letter along with other Conservative MPs expressing disappointment at the BBC's decision to scrap the licence fee for over 75s. So we're hearing about scam emails, letters, and our supporters are telling us, even those who don't watch live TV just on demand, that they're scared and they're worried about letters and enforcement officers at the door. This is bullying, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I think back to my university days where I can't remember a single person who had a TV license, and as soon as you knew they were approaching campus, you would see hordes of people running around with TVs knowing where to hide them. But it's kind of that bullying procedure where actually for those people who don't even watch the BBC, now bear in mind this is literally only to fund the enunciator going on, who actually don't want to, have no intention of, but are still being forced to pay it just to watch channels that actually are paid for by advertising revenue. So it's overt bullying. There's no opt out of, if I want to watch the BBC, I'll pay for it as a pay-per-view service or streaming service like Netflix or any of the other streaming services. So it's just a downright outdated, wrong, and immoral system, really.
Absolutely. And, the BBC went back on their deal with the government over the free licenses for the over 75s, which I alluded to previously. We saw Tony Hall saying that it was a strong deal for the BBC back in 2015, and now they're trying to pin the blame on the government. What are your feelings about that?
Well, he was either lying then or lying now. So I think ultimately, if it was a good deal back in 2015, yet all the star performers and everyone else had been saying pay rise after pay rise, get your own house in order first, and then start deciding what avenues you kind of want to go down. So I don't believe what he's saying. I think similar to what I was saying with the business model being outdated. Actually, I think a lot of the BBC approach to things is relatively outdated, whether it's diversity officers or anything else. They need to be much more commercial in their approach, and I don't think they're up to it.
Completely. And you mentioned the stars. The BBC are also paying out these huge salaries to their stars. It doesn't sit well with them now that they're chasing the elderly for their license fee, does it? Something doesn't quite add up there.
Well, no, when you can pay the likes of Gary Lineker best part of £2 million a year, but you're chasing old Doris for less than £150 just for the ability to not watch the BBC, that doesn't add up to anything being moral, right, or just, in my view.
No, and you mentioned, I mean, it was in your letter, but you mentioned a moment ago the BBC allocated £100 million for diversity, which is a huge sum for any organisation. But this is an organisation that's also asking the government to extend their borrowing capabilities. One thing doesn't, equate to the other. What is going on there? So our view at Defund the BBC is that the BBC should absolutely be representing diversity, but not just ethnicity, also socio-economic diversity, diversity of thought. Do you think that's what they're going to achieve with this massive pot of money?
I'm absolutely not. I mean, that's the short answer. To extend slightly, we don't need diversity officers. We just need a BBC that represents the nation, and it doesn't. To kind of go back to my childhood, if me and my twin brother misbehaved, you'd have your heads banged together. They just need some common sense banging into it to actually realise that this isn't the right approach. It's not going to work, and it's ultimately not making people happy. And if people are turning away from the BBC for ultimately a broadcast that we should have faith in, we should be proud of, and we're not anymore. So they really do need to change, be more representative of, a lot of the seats we gained last year. So the Midlands, the North, those are the communities that are turning away from the BBC because the BBC doesn't speak either to them or for them anymore.
No, absolutely. On that note, the BBC have made some pretty insensitive remarks recently, with comments about the countryside being a white environment. The suggestions that they turned down All Creatures Great and Small because that was too white, and they're perpetuating the theory of white privilege on their education platform, Bite Size. Is this appropriate, given that the BBC Charter obliges the BBC to bring people together and to help contribute towards the social cohesion and well-being of the UK?
Well, considering in regards to social mobility, it's white working class boys who are the most left behind group in the entire country. Going into those communities of Greater Manchester, of Lancashire, of Yorkshire, and saying you're not getting on in life because of white privilege. They don't feel white privilege. They're left behind and struggling to catch up. So it's absolutely similar to most things I've said. It's the wrong approach. It doesn't speak. It doesn't help anyone. And ultimately, the BBC should be the pinnacle for what broadcast should be, whether it's broadcast journalism, the news, our entertainment, and it's just not.
Completely. I think you've got a point there about bringing common sense back into these things. Your letter concluded by saying that you would welcome the chance to discuss the BBC's planned changes. Have you heard from Tim Davie, the new Director General?
Surprisingly, I haven't heard a single thing from him.
Well, what would your message be to him?
My one kind of quick, simple message would be: the British public are getting tired. If you are there to entertain them, listen to them. Actually engage with them. See what they want to be put out, not only on TV but radio as well. Engage, in meaningful dialogue. And actually represent them, because at the moment it hasn't done for many years, and it's fast becoming irrelevant. So if you still want there to be a BBC, listen. Yeah,
completely. And the next appointments. So obviously he's quite new. The next appointments are, of course, the chairs of the BBC and of Ofcom. And Charles Moore has ruled himself out. Do you think someone like Charles, who had very strong opinions about the BBC, do you think they could make a difference?
I would like to think so. I mean, for far too long, we've had kind of appointments that have almost perpetuated this downward trend of respect and trust in the BBC. So hopefully someone with publicly renowned from the private sector who has a different view of how it should be run more commercially would be a start. But actually someone who just won't kneel down to the woke agenda that's coming forward. If ideally we can get someone who ticks both of those boxes, it's a huge step in the right direction.
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? So one of our aims at Defund the BBC is to decriminalise non-payment of the licence fee by the end of this year. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree, and can we achieve it?
I agree. I think going back to the previous comments where it's almost bullying people into paying for something that they neither want nor use isn't a way to go about any business model in a modern day. I think as soon as it is decriminalised, you'll probably see a stark reduction in the revenue. Whether that means their stars move on, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So it absolutely needs to be done. Whether or not we can achieve it this year, I think there's a few big ticket items which might be going on in the background at the moment. But I'm hopeful in the very near future we can go some way to again, to seeing common sense and ultimately listening to the people on this.
Well, that's all positive. But some of the worries are that in decriminalising the licence fee, it will just move the issues around harassment and penalising some of the most vulnerable and poorest in society from the magistrates' courts into the hands of bailiffs. Are MPs aware of this? And if you do move to decriminalise, will you be able to stop a situation where the problem is just jumping from the frying pan into the fire?
Well, I think to decriminalise is arguably step one. We then need to just get rid of the licence fee model. If the BBC are confident of their shows, and whether that is Match of the Day, regardless of Gary Lineker or any other shows, the BBC do make some entertaining shows, and people want to view them. Why not just have a subscription model like everyone else, and then you will literally survive by whether or not you're providing quality entertainment. That really has to be the way we end up going. If that means you now have ads, which granted most people don't like, but for a few extra minutes for every show, so be it.
Yeah, and on that note, at Defund the BBC, we found that there's a lot of confusion about what is and what isn't covered by the licence fee. Basically, it covers all live TV, any channel, whether it's made by the BBC or not. So ITV, Channel 4, even French and Belgian TV, if you're able to get that. So surely the scope of the BBC's charter should also be reduced in this digital age so that it only covers BBC's own content.
It should do. I mean, when you have literally every channel with their own online versions, all the streaming channels and everything else, the BBC should really just be responsible for their own house. Why dictate what everyone else can and can't provide just because it suits you? We are conservatives at the end of the day, and we very much should have a laissez-faire approach and an invisible hand guiding. So it should be driven by the market, not driven by the BBC in this.
Here. Okay. So one last question, Christian. What level of support do you think there will be in Parliament?
Well, certainly from colleagues I've spoken to, I imagine certainly from the backbenchers there will be a lot of support. Certainly from committees, there will be a lot of support. And I think we are pushing against an open door. It's just how quickly we can fully open that door and get progress that we all want to see.
Christian Wakeford, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Not a problem, Calvin.